Have you ever felt like you're trying to hold your relationship together with your bare hands, while everything around you is falling apart? You say what's on your mind, but it's like your voice vanishes into the void. You give more than you should, and still feel invisible. You love, but end up wondering if you're the only one trying. Maybe you've asked yourself, what am I doing wrong? Maybe you've already tried changing your tone, giving space, asking less, being more patient. But no matter what you do, nothing really works. Here's the uncomfortable truth no one talks about. The biggest threat to a relationship isn't always the other person. It's not always betrayal or distance, or even indifference. Sometimes the most silent destroyer is how we think about love, how we react under pressure, and how we expect the other person to fill in the gaps we haven't healed in ourselves. This isn't about blaming yourself. It's about something deeper, something ancient, a kind of inner armor that philosophers once used to face loss, war, and exile, and that today you can use to navigate the complex battlefield of love. That armor is Stoicism. This isn't a soft philosophy of detachment. It's not about pretending you don't feel. It's about learning how to stay grounded when your emotions pull you in every direction. It's about clarity, emotional discipline, and most of all, freedom. Freedom from reactivity, freedom from toxic expectations, freedom to love without losing yourself in the process. According to Epictetus, it's not what happens to you, but how you respond to it that matters. And as Ryan Holiday reminds us, anger is what makes everything worse. Control is what brings us closer to what matters. This channel is the Stoic Lighthouse, where ancient wisdom guides you through modern storms. If you believe that love can be more than emotion, that it can be a conscious, powerful practice of presence, reflection, and growth, you're in the right place. Go ahead and hit like and subscribe now if you haven't already. That's how you join a community that values truth over comfort and philosophy over noise. Because in today's video, we're going deep. We'll walk through 6 subtle habits that slowly and silently destroy relationships, habits you might not even realize are part of your daily life. And for each one, Stoicism will offer not just insight, but transformation. A way to shift your inner world so that your outer relationships finally reflect your deeper clarity. The last one, number 6, that one may just rewire how you see love itself. So stay with me and let's begin this journey inward. Mistake number 1, reacting in the heat of emotion. Every relationship goes through tension. It's unavoidable. But what turns a minor disagreement into a breaking point? What transforms a single word into a wound that takes weeks to heal? It's not always what was said. It's how you reacted. You've felt it before. Your voice gets louder, your chest tightens, your vision narrows. One wrong tone, one badly timed silence, and suddenly, the person you love becomes the enemy. You're not talking anymore, you're attacking. Or worse, shutting down completely. This is what the Stoics saw as the failure of self-command, the moment you stop guiding your emotions and start being dragged by them. According to Epictetus, anyone can become angry, that's easy, but to be angry at the right person, in the right way, at the right time, for the right reason, that's not within everyone's power. Dein. What he's pointing to is profound. If you don't control your emotions will control your relationship. And when that happens, your love becomes a battlefield, not a sanctuary. The modern Stoic thinker Donald Robertson explains, anger arises when we let our imagination override our reason. Stoic training is about taking back that control. And what happens when you don't? You already know. A small miscommunication spirals. A tone of voice becomes a trigger. You lash out, not because of what happened, but because of how you interpreted what happened. And that split-second reaction costs you trust, peace, and sometimes the whole connection. But Stoicism offers a powerful tool, one that even Roman generals used before battle. Conscious pause. Before you speak, breathe. Before you accuse, observe. Before you defend yourself, ask, is this really about now, or is it about everything I've been carrying? This practice comes from what the Stoics called premeditatio malorum, the rational anticipation of adversity. It doesn't mean expecting disaster. It means preparing yourself to stay centered when adversity comes, as it always does. According to Seneca, there is nothing more honorable than remaining calm while everything around you is on fire. And remember, this calm is not weakness. It's power. You're not ignoring what happened. You're choosing the kind of person you want to be in the middle of it. Even the pre-Stoic philosopher Socrates, one of Stoicism's major influences, modeled this principle. When insulted in public, he wouldn't retaliate. He'd respond with a question, with curiosity, with self-restraint. He understood that losing your temper is easy, but mastering it, that's rare. Modern author and Stoic Ryan Holiday puts it simply, emotional control is a superpower. Without it, you're a slave to your impulses. So here's your choice. Keep reacting the same way and repeating the same arguments, or become someone who changes the direction of the moment with just one breath. You don't need to scream to be heard. You don't need to punish to make a point. Sometimes the most shocking thing you can do in the face of chaos is stay calm. True strength isn't how loud you get, it's how little you're shaken. Mistake number 2, expecting your partner to complete you. It's one of the most romanticized and most dangerous ideas we've ever been sold. You complete me. It sounds beautiful on screen. It feels comforting in the middle of loneliness. But in real life, that belief slowly poisons even the strongest relationships. Why? Because when you expect someone else to complete you, you're not offering love. You're outsourcing responsibility. You're handing over your sense of peace, purpose, and self-worth to another human being and saying, "Here, hold this for me." That's not love. That's dependency dressed up in intimacy. And here's the hard truth. Nothing exhausts a relationship faster than the silent pressure to fix what you haven't faced within yourself. You start loving with expectations. You start giving with resentment. You wait, not with hope, but with anxiety. You believe that your partner should just know what you need without you ever saying it. This emotional outsourcing creates a fragile bond, one built not on connection, but on quiet desperation. According to Marcus Aurelius, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. And if those thoughts are rooted in neediness, fear, or fantasy, the relationship becomes a house built on sand. The Stoics teach us that the foundation of any meaningful relationship is emotional autonomy. That means showing up whole, not hoping to be filled. Modern philosopher Massimo Pigliucci writes, "The idea that we need someone else to be whole is a dangerous illusion. Emotional independence is a Stoic virtue. This isn't about detachment. It's about responsibility. You don't come into a relationship looking to be rescued. You come to share the strength you've already cultivated." Seneca said it plainly, "Whoever depends on others for happiness is always one step from misery." He wasn't calling for cold distance. He was pointing to something liberating, a love that isn't built on need, but on choice. This shift is radical, especially in a world that glorifies soulmates, fairy tales, and emotional fusion. But here's the paradox. The more complete you are on your own, the more powerful your connection becomes. Instead of clinging, you support. Instead of demanding, you offer. Instead of waiting for validation, you become the kind of person who creates it from within. Ryan Holiday sums this up with piercing clarity. You have to love yourself enough not to turn your partner into a savior, but into a companion for the journey. Love isn't about finding your missing piece. It's about walking beside someone who isn't here to fix you, but to walk with you as you both grow. That's not just Stoic, that's sustainable. Mistake number 3. trying to control your partner instead of controlling yourself. You've probably done it, even without realizing, tried to shape your partner into someone more affectionate, more expressive, more like the version of them you imagined, not the one standing in front of you. Maybe you asked gently at first, maybe you dropped hints, and when that didn't work, the frustration grew. So did the control, subtle at times, aggressive at others. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The need to control someone else almost always reflects a lack of control within yourself. According to Chrysippus, the wise man concerns himself only with what lies within the bounds of his will, for everything else belongs to chance, not to choice. Your partner's behavior, tone, speed, emotional availability, none of that is fully yours to shape. But your thoughts, your actions, your expectations, those are entirely within your reach. Yet most of us get it backward. We try to manage their reactions, micromanage their decisions, dictate how they love us, all while neglecting the only territory we truly govern, ourselves. Modern Stoic Donald Robertson explains, "It's irrational to spend energy on what lies outside our control, especially when we've yet to master what lies within it." This applies directly to relationships. You can't force someone to listen, but you can learn to speak in a way that invites attention. You can't guarantee they'll stay, but you can cultivate a presence that makes staying feel like peace and not pressure. Marcus Aurelius wrote with Stoic humility, "You have power over your mind, not external events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This mindset changes everything. You stop trying to mold the other person like clay, and instead become the kind of person who inspires, not imposes. Pre-Stoic thinker Socrates was known for never trying to control others, even when he disagreed deeply. He led through questions, not orders, influence, not domination, and that's the shift modern relationships are starving for. Massimo Pigliucci writes, "A healthy relationship grows not through control, but through character, yours. When you master yourself, you become magnetic. Calm becomes your default. Boundaries become respectful, not punitive, and love becomes an offering, not a demand." The desire to control is really just fear. Fear of losing love, fear of being hurt, fear of not being enough. But that fear shrinks the more centered you become. Because when you control yourself, not obsessively but deliberately, you stop reacting to your partner and start responding to your principles. And that's when love becomes less about domination and more about devotion. Mistake number 4, holding on to resentment and refusing to forgive. You wake up, everything feels fine, until that one memory creeps back in. A comment they made, a moment they disappeared when you needed them most, that subtle betrayal they might not even remember, but you've carried it ever since. That's how resentment works. It doesn't show up all at once. It drips, one drop at a time, until it floods everything. You think you've moved on, but you haven't, because underneath your silence, there's tension. Behind your smile, there's caution. And what you're really building isn't a relationship. It's a quiet war zone with invisible landmines. The Stoics understood this dynamic centuries ago. They saw resentment not as a justified emotional response, but as a form of self-inflicted suffering. Not because forgiveness is easy, but because holding on is far more damaging. Seneca warned, "The generous soul is quick to forgive, for it knows that the weight of resentment crushes the one who carries it." And he didn't stop there. No one suffers more than the person who quietly cultivates hatred. In modern terms, resentment is like emotional debt. It accrues interest day after day. But the cost isn't paid by your partner, it's paid by your peace. Marcus Aurelius, writing not as a guru but as a Roman emperor navigating betrayal and pressure, reflected, "When someone wrongs you, consider. They acted according to what they believed. The error lies in their ignorance, not in an intent to hurt." That perspective doesn't excuse the harm, but it changes your position in the story, from victim to witness. from hostage to philosopher. And in that shift, you reclaim your power. Ryan Holiday takes this idea even further. Forgiveness is an act of strength, not weakness. It's the choice to evolve while the other person remains frozen in the past. Forgiveness isn't letting someone get away with it. It's refusing to let you be the one imprisoned by it. Massimo Pigliucci adds modern clarity. To forgive doesn't mean to forget. It means choosing not to let the pain dictate your actions anymore. Forgiveness doesn't mean there are no boundaries. It means those boundaries come from wisdom, not wounds. You can say, I see what happened, and I choose peace. You can draw the line without drawing a sword. You can protect your heart without hardening it. Pre-Stoic philosopher Musonius Rufus, a teacher of Epictetus, believed that philosophy isn't for lectures, it's for living. And in relationships, the way we live forgiveness becomes one of the clearest signs of our maturity. Because the longer you hold on to resentment, the more it becomes your identity, and the more it shapes how you show up, not just with your partner, but with yourself. The Stoics weren't emotionless, they were lucid. And lucidity tells us forgiveness isn't a gift for the one who hurt you. It's a lifeline for the one who wants to move forward. Mistake number 5, avoiding difficult conversations. You feel the tension rising. Something bothers you. A subtle change in how they speak to you, a habit that's grown louder with time, a need that keeps going unmet. You want to say something, but you don't. You tell yourself you're protecting the peace. You tell yourself it's not worth the fight. You convince yourself that silence is strength. But is it really? Avoiding uncomfortable conversations doesn't preserve peace. It preserves distance, because what isn't spoken doesn't disappear. It festers. It turns into stories, assumptions, passive resentment. You start to withdraw, not because of what was said, but because of what wasn't. The Stoics never shied away from discomfort. They believed that clarity was a moral duty, even when it came at a personal cost. Epictetus taught that if you seek to grow, you must be prepared to be misunderstood, judged, even ridiculed. Growth isn't polite. It's not always convenient, but it is essential. As Epictetus put it, if you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid by others. Modern Stoic Massimo Pigliucci applies this to relationships directly. True harmony doesn't come from avoiding conflict. It comes from learning to face it with reason and courage. That kind of courage doesn't mean being aggressive. It means being clear. It means sitting down, looking your partner in the eye and saying, "There's something on my mind. Can we talk about it?" That moment, the one you fear will drive them away, might be the very thing that brings you closer, because the opposite of love isn't conflict, it's indifference. It's what happens when we give up, when we choose the false comfort of avoidance over the real work of connection. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, not as emperor, but as a man wrestling with pain, "Do not run from discomfort, for it is often the beginning of wisdom." And that's what hard conversations are. Uncomfortable gateways to deeper understanding. They're fire, yes, but fire doesn't just burn, it also forges. Modern philosopher Donald Robertson echoes this. Avoiding conflict often reveals a deeper fear, a fear of rejection stronger than the desire to build something honest. So speak, not to accuse, but to align, not to win, but to understand. Not to unload your frustration, but to express your truth. You don't need to yell to be heard. You don't need to explode to be honest. You just need to choose presence over pretense. Because silence might feel safe, but it never built anything worth keeping. Mistake number 6. Comparing your relationship to others. You're lying in bed, phone in hand. Swipe. A proposal in Paris. Swipe. Matching outfits, smiles that could sell a lifestyle. Swipe, a couple laughing uncontrollably on vacation. Again. It's not just a scroll. It's a subtle attack on your inner world. Because every post whispers something to you. This is what love should look like. This is what you're missing. This is how happy other people are, and you're not. It's not envy in the traditional sense. It's erosion, a slow, almost invisible corrosion of appreciation. And before you know it, the person lying next to you starts to feel disappointing. But what are you really comparing? A filtered frame, posed in golden hour lighting, with a caption that's been rewritten 5 times. You're not looking at a relationship. You're looking at branding. Ancient Stoic Hierocles warned, "He who keeps his eyes fixed on what others possess loses all joy in what is his." The Stoics understood this long before TikTok and Instagram. The mind, they knew, was vulnerable to illusion, especially when it traded presence for projection. When you compare your relationship to what you see online, you're measuring your behind the scenes against someone else's highlight reel. You're judging real, messy, raw human connection against a curated digital product. Ryan Holiday captures this deception perfectly. Envy is comparison without context. And without context, all comparison is dishonest. But this dishonesty doesn't just deceive you, it damages you. It makes you question the ordinary, when the ordinary is where real love lives. It makes you doubt the slow, the quiet, the imperfect. It tricks you into thinking love must always be visible to be valuable. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, "Do not waste what is yours by desiring what belongs to another. What you now envy may one day appear to you as a burden." And that's the paradox. You crave their passion without seeing their therapy bills. You want their chemistry without knowing their fights. You admire their perfect match without understanding how much of it is for the algorithm. Even in modern times, philosophers like Donald Robertson echo this idea. The philosophical life begins when we stop measuring ourselves by the standards of others. This isn't about ignoring other relationships, it's about protecting your perception, because perception shapes everything. Instead of obsessing over how they show love in public, ask, how are we showing up in private? Are we present with each other, or are we too distracted chasing aesthetics? The truth is, love doesn't need a filter. It doesn't have to go viral. It just needs to be real. The most meaningful moments often go undocumented. The apology whispered after an argument, the shared glance when no one else gets the joke, the steady loyalty that doesn't need a hashtag. The Stoic relationship isn't perfect. It's practiced, it's honest, it's rooted not in comparison but in cultivation. And here's the final reminder. Gratitude and comparison cannot live in the same space. Every time you compare, you pull energy away from what you could be building right in front of you. The Stoic doesn't look outward to measure love. He looks inward with clarity. And then he shows up fully, with intention. That's the kind of relationship worth keeping, and that's the kind of love no post can imitate. So here we are, not just talking about relationships, but redefining them, not as emotional safety nets or fairy tale promises, but as sacred spaces of transformation. Because real love, enduring love, doesn't come from fantasy. It comes from philosophy, from the day-by-day discipline of showing up calmly, clearly, consciously, not needing the other to fix you, not waiting to be rescued, but choosing to grow together even when it's hard. That's why Stoicism matters. It doesn't offer escape. It offers structure. It doesn't numb you, it strengthens you. It doesn't make love easier, it makes you better at doing love the right way. Let's remember the path we've walked. When you stop reacting impulsively, you protect trust. When you stop expecting completion, you bring wholeness. When you stop controlling, you start inspiring. When you release resentment, you make space for peace. When you embrace hard conversations, you build intimacy. And when you stop comparing, you reclaim gratitude and reality. These are not theories, they are disciplines. And as the philosopher Pierre Hadot reminded us, ancient philosophy was, above all, a way of life. And living with another human being may be the most demanding and revealing of those ways. Love, then, isn't just emotional. It's existential. It reveals your shadows, your impatience, your need to be right. But it also reveals your potential to be calm, to be clear, to be kind on purpose. So I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, what insight from today's video do you feel called to apply in your relationship right now? If this message gave you clarity, a sense of direction, or even just a pause to breathe, hit the like button now. Subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone whose relationship deserves more than guesswork. It deserves wisdom. Because we don't need more relationship tips. We need more people willing to turn love into a path of practice. And if you're ready to continue that path, then your next challenge awaits. In the next video, we'll dive into the Stoic method that destroys procrastination in just 5 minutes, if you have the courage. It's not a gimmick. It's a confrontation with your own avoidance, with your comfort, with the part of you that keeps waiting instead of becoming. But before you go, take this with you. A relationship is not where you find yourself. It's where you prove yourself. I'll see you in the next one.